This is the Real Change Wilmington podcast, episode 15, Wilmington City Schools, part 1, Leadership and Discipline, with our guests today, Jim Brady and Carrie Zeigler.
I just feel like the value of public education is all-inclusive. So I feel like because I send my child to a public school, she's, in my opinion, getting a much broader education as a person. You know, she's learning more about acceptance, about diversity, about socioeconomic differences, how to treat people, and no matter who you are and what you do and where you came from, they are human, and that's what I want her to learn by sending her to public.
What is going on, everybody? This is your host of the Real Change Wilmington podcast, Dustin Pierce.
And I'm Emily Spencer, the co-host.
So we have a pretty great episode for you guys today with the Superintendent and Board of Education President to discuss some community concerns and what is the value of a public school and ways to create change without saying no to the levy. So if you never heard of Real Change Wilmington before, we started a few months ago. Basically, we wanted to get a list of resources for people who have needs, whether that be addiction recovery, transportation issues, childcare issues, or so forth. Get all those together, put them on a website, get them out to people to help empower individuals in our community to get the help that they need, and also to educate the community on what is out there. So a few months ago, I was also able to have a conversation with someone who looked a little bit down and out outside of the library. I talked to her about just what's her story, what's she coming from, and I assumed what probably a lot of people do is they got shipped in from out of town, but talking to them, they were escaping a domestic violence situation. And because I knew of the resources in town doing the research, I was able to connect them with different organizations that could help them. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're both trying to empower people in need and educate the community on how to give, not just pocket change, but real change, hence our name. So that's a little bit about us. If you want to learn more, you can check out the first episode of our podcast available on our website and mobile app, and then any podcast player that you have to use. Before we jump into the podcast, let's just do a quick reset here and just check in. So Emily, how are you doing this week? How are you doing this morning?
This morning, fine. I've been running all over town this morning, trying to get some meetings with some people to learn more information for the website for the podcast. And then I sat in on the Family and Children First board meeting, which was really interesting.
What did they talk about there?
They are a board of members from different resources in the community that get together to talk about how they can link families with children who are struggling either with poverty or addiction or a wide range of things to get them support, get them help, make life a little easier for them.
And I heard that you ran into a surprise guest there.
Yeah, I ran into the man, the myth, the legend, Jim Brady.
Yeah, so that's pretty awesome. Jim is definitely getting around the community and chatting with different people. So we get the opportunity to talk with him today.
How's it going with you?
It's going good. I recently got some blueberries and I'm trying to grow some blueberries. And I immediately killed them in the frost and had to get some new ones. And then my chickens ate those ones. So sooner or later, I'm going to have some blueberries.
Third round's a charm.
Yeah, third time's a charm. So that's what's going on in my life. So I want to take a quick second to just kind of talk about the background of how I got interested in this topic of the Wilmington City Schools. Obviously, there's a lot of concerns in the community that are expressed in the news journal, online, just talking to different people. Those concerns being things like leadership, discipline, the academic performance, cultural, political issues, just generally not wanting to pay more taxes and things like that. So I wanted to see if the school would be willing to respond to some of those community concerns. And I got the opportunity a few months ago to go on a trip, a day trip to Portsmouth, Ohio. There's a college down there. What's the college called? Shawnee. Yeah. So Shawnee has this building in town that they converted into like an office space, incubation, innovation station for the community and for the college. And people in Wilmington are trying to actually purchase the Masonic home to do something similar with that here. And I got invited on that trip. I was the youngest and most unconnected person in that vehicle. So I spent most of the trip just listening. And I got to hear from two different community leaders that I have a lot of respect for, share about different topics. And one of the things they were talking about is the value of a public school for a community and how that knits community together. Again, I'm someone who has gone both ways on the levy. So I have the same concerns most people probably have. And hearing just hearing him say how a public school binds a community together, and obviously you and I, Emily, are making a resource for the community, that aligned to my values, and it kind of changed my mind and my heart on the issue of the public school system. And then the other gentleman in the car was lamenting about how the community has been historically voting no for the levy when they don't realize there's other ways to cause change or to get the answers that they want besides voting no. So, that is a value of mine. I mean, just shooting things down without getting engaged and working through the issue aligned to my values. So those two different things really changed my mind and my heart about the school district. And that's what kind of has motivated me going into these conversations is, one, I want to get answers for myself and for the community about the topics we discuss, about the topics that are of concern. And then I want to also just ask the different people involved, what is the value of a public school? Even if we still have disagreements, we still have concerns, what is the value? And can we create change without just saying no? So, and then you want to add to that, Emily?
That pretty much sums it up. I mean, you did tell everybody already that I'm historically not a voter, but I'm historically not a voter. And when people hear the words tax increase, especially someone like me who's just starting out in their mid-20s, it's scary. Like, nobody wants to pay extra for anything. So sitting down with Jim and Carrie and everybody about the school levy has really opened my eyes to why it is important. And at the end of the day, a little bit extra every month to help support our students, our schools, and their administration and staff, it really all works out for me.
Yeah, and just looking at the actual numbers, because tax increase does sound scary, but they have information on their website about if you make $50,000 a year, that breaks down to a monthly cost of like $31.25, which is practically nothing.
Yeah, about $1 a day.
Yeah. So without further ado, we're going to bring in Jim and Carrie. Not Jim Carrey, that would be awesome, but Jim Brady and Carrie Zeigler, and we're going to talk. All right, so Jim Brady and Carrie Zeigler, welcome to the podcast. Is it Zeigler?
Zeigler.
Zeigler?
Mm-hmm.
Zeigler?
Zeigler.
Okay. All right, welcome to the Real Change Wilmington podcast.
Thank you.
So we're going to start with some easy questions about your background. And Jim, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm originally born in Queens, New York, moved to Wilmington, Ohio, actually Cuba, in my elementary years. My father was stationed at Clinton County Airfield, and had the opportunity to go to Martinsville Elementary, Antioch Middle, 5th grade, and then I was a graduate, 1976 graduate of Wilmington High School. At the age of 17, I joined the Marines. By the time I was out, I was 20. I came back. I'd been to 16 different countries. Came back to being, got hired by the Wilmington Police Department to be a police officer. Initially sent to the police academy. Was a dispatcher, waiting to get on the road, and then went back in the Marines. Finished my tour in the Marine Corps after 20 total years. I knew I wanted to get into education when I was the ROTC instructor at Ohio State University, and realized how much I enjoyed teaching. Some of the other opportunities I had was a drill instructor at Parris Island Officer Candidate School. I ran the Marine Corps Correctional Custody Unit and was assistant warden at one of the military prisons, and my last assignment was that of the assistant director of the Military Police Corrections Academy in San Antonio, Texas, which was a unilateral, all different branches sent their service members there to be trained. And I retired in 97, and my first teaching job was at Princeton High School. From there I went to Scarlet Oaks, and while coaching at Clinton Massey and teaching at Scarlet Oaks, an opportunity came open at Clinton Massey to be assistant principal and athletic director, district athletic director. I interviewed, got the job, and was there for about 12 years. And from there, my last position was that of a student services director. My first superintendency was at Westfall, which is in Pickaway County. The situation and the setup was a lot similar to that of Clinton Massey. I then got married in 2006 and moved to Cleveland. And my position up there, I took a position as assistant superintendent at East Cleveland City Schools.
Why Cleveland for?
That's where my wife was from. She was going to come down to the Westfall area. She'd been in her district for over 20 years. I'd only been at Westfall for 2. I felt, why have her move? I can move and find another job. She's been committed to that district that whole time, which is where she also retired from as the elementary principal of Fairview Park City Schools. So from there, a position came open here in Brown County, neighboring county, as superintendent of Fayetteville Perry Schools. And I was there for 4 years. And I thought I found my last job, and that was the superintendent of the Department of Youth Services and their 3 different school districts that they have. One's in Circleville, one's in Canton-Massillon area, and the other's in Cleveland. And it's the schools were in each of the juvenile facilities. So all the students in those facilities were there for felony charges, but they still had state certified licensed teachers in each of the facilities, as well as career tech. And things were going well, and then the position came open in Wilmington, and I'm thinking, wow, I probably would have never considered applying before, but it just seemed like the right fit for me. And so I interviewed and was fortunate to have the position offered, accepted it, and have been in that position since August of this year.
So this is your first school year at the city schools?
First school. Not totally complete yet, but yes.
Sure. So you also have some business experience too. You were a founder of, is it Quick Wipes? I saw in the paper. Tell us about that.
Well, that was unique, and not many people know about it, but yes, it was probably around the 2006 time frame when MRSA was out, and I was at a...
What's MRSA?
It's similar to... It's a disease that you can contract from using unclean weight equipment or as you enter a grocery store. So I had been at a golf outing, and I noticed when I was there that the person that went in front of me walked out, and I went in the porta potty, and there was nowhere to sanitize my hands. So when I came out and saw that person serving me the hot dog and hamburgers, I said, you got to come up with something. So I checked, did a worldwide patent search, and learned that nothing existed at the time. So I created a thing called Quick Wipes, which held Clorox and Lysol dispensers, and was doing quite well on the side while still having a full-time job, and was approached by Clorox and asked about, hey, why are you selling so many of these? I told them, their regional rep hooked me up with somebody corporate. I sent them the product with Clorox on the outside to show that, hey, if somebody walks into that grocery store and they see Lysol, Clorox, or even the Kroger brand, they're going to probably pull the Clorox one because they just saw it. It wasn't 6 months later, I'm walking into a Giant Eagle in Fairview Park. I almost fell to my knees. There it was. They'd taken my product and made it a little bit bigger. I learned after the fact that I had a utility patent, a design patent, not a utility patent, which enabled them to do that. So once that started, then every time I walked into a grocery store or a hospital, it was frustrating. But
kick in the gut.
That's odd you know that.
So did you boycott Clorox?
No, but I make sure I always take something to clean off my cart when I walk in. And it's kind of sad because, even if I made $1 off each one, and could you imagine during COVID?
I was going to ask why you're still a teacher for, and why you're still in schools.
Billionaire.
Yeah, but no, that was something that I just took from start to end, and it was unique.
And then you also owned or operated a pizza place too?
Yes, Pizza City USA in Richlands, North Carolina. It was a franchise, one of 12 or 13 in that area. And I got into that business because at the time, if you wanted a pizza in Richlands, you had to go about 12 miles, meet at a gas station, and the driver from Jacksonville, North Carolina would give you the pizza from that. And I'm thinking, wow, this is a gold mine. Mm-hmm. So ironically, we were doing extremely well. It was the only pizza place in the town. And over time, the Marine Corps chose to send me to San Antonio, and along with that came a promotion to Master Gunnery Sergeant E9. So only 1% of Marines get to be an E9 or Master Gunnery Sergeant Major. And so I said yes, sold the franchise, and moved to Texas.
Okay. What were some of like the key experiences in the military that you had? Did you have like active duty, or were you in combat?
No, ironically, each time there was a conflict, I was in one of the training commands, and when we were at Ohio State, the first Desert Storm had started, and my boss had volunteered both of us to go, and we were, left in our assignment because there were plenty of people in those positions. But no, I was not in combat.
Okay. And what do you take away from that experience of being in the military?
Oh, I mean, as I said earlier, from age 17 to 19 to see 16 different countries, experience different cultures, and then live in a variety of different countries. And the leadership that's thrust your way as a young non-commissioned officer, you're taught that as a leader you eat last as you go up the chain to make sure those below you have the opportunity to eat first and that there's always enough food. And that type of stuff sticks in your head. And it's, the core values of integrity and loyalty, once Marine, always Marine. I know it's a cliche, but it's also realistic. And I also got to play quite a variety of different sports while in the military as well.
And out of all the places in the world, Wilmington, Ohio is the most beautiful.
No, I won't say that, but I can tell you somehow, some way I always came back, and it's an attraction. And it really sank home when I had a tragedy in my family, and I lost my son to a car accident a week before he was graduating from local high school, and the community outpouring and support just blew me away.
Here in Wilmington?
Yeah, I was living in Cleveland. He was living down here, and the turnout was, I'll never get over it, and that just stuck. There's differences of opinion in this county at this time and in this era, but when something happens, the community always comes together. It's just hard to describe. And when you've lived in Scotland, you've lived in San Antonio, Texas, you've lived in Virginia, I never really got to experience that anywhere else. And it wasn't just because of that tragedy. It was also because of each time you came home or, you're home on leave. It's just, everybody seems to know everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Carrie, it is your turn.
Can't wait to see what you dug up about me.
So many things.
Stuff out for that. Oh boy.
Yeah, so Carrie, tell us about your background in life in Wilmington and career and so forth.
All right. I was born and raised in Wilmington, so I'm a lifelong resident of Wilmington, Ohio, and graduated from Wilmington High School.
With Jim?
No, we're a few years apart.
Oh, okay.
I did go off for college, but I always, kind of like Jim, I've always come back home. Mine probably is just every couple years. I've only been gone a year or two at a time, but family is really important to me, and so I always wanted to come back home to live here. After college, I got a job in Wilmington City Schools as a teacher in the middle school, and progressed from there. I ended up being an assistant principal at the high school for a few years, and then most of the time I was elementary school principal at Holmes. And so I spent 18 years in the Wilmington City School District in some capacity. Since then, I did leave, and I've am now a small business owner in the community, and that has really kind of helped me develop, in different ways there, and it's allowed me to do things outside of the schools that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do. I am married to Doug, who's also from Wilmington, and is a graduate of Wilmington High School, and we have a daughter who attends Wilmington Middle School. So we are definitely, we bleed orange and black in our family for sure. In my spare time, Doug and I are co-president of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, which is a nonprofit organization in which we build beds and deliver beds to local children in the community. And I feel like that's one opportunity that opened after leaving the schools. I would definitely not have done that. And it's really, I'm passionate just about giving back. And when I heard of that opportunity, I was excited because I love helping families in need who are our local families and giving back to the community in which raised me. So that's pretty much me in a quick nutshell.
And your family is pretty connected in town, or is, I mean, not connected, but I guess well known.
Well, none of us have really left Wilmington, if that's how you want to look at it. I do have a sister who graduated from Wilmington High School and took off, but everyone else has pretty much stayed locally. So you could say we're connected to the community because we've all, my dad and my dad's family was born and raised in Martinsville, so they have a lot of connections out in that direction. But really, we all are just from Wilmington and have just, it's been our home.
Yeah. So your dad owns Peel and Lundy.
That is correct.
Which is whose basement we're in right now, recording this in this very echoey room.
Yeah.
And awesome guy, very kind man.
Yes, he is. Thank you.
How was the transition from being a teacher to a principal, and what did you like about each role?
Well, I loved being a teacher. I was a middle school science teacher, so I really enjoyed the hands-on activities. I love the middle school age group. I'm a slightly sarcastic person, and I enjoy the humor that goes along with middle school and those kids, and I really enjoyed my time doing that. However, in every position I've been in, I always kind of look for the future, and it's like, can I continue to do this for 20 more years? Usually after about 5 or 6 years in, the answer is no, and I just start, doesn't mean I necessarily leave right then, but I do start thinking ahead and what I can do differently or how I can better myself, and becoming an administrator was just the next most logical step. When I became, I really enjoyed my time as an assistant principal at the high school. Ron Sexton was the principal, and we worked well together. Jeff Fryman, we had 2 assistants at the time. Jeff Fryman was also there. We really worked great together, and that was a lot of fun. And then the opportunity opened up at Holmes Elementary, and initially it kind of scared me because I was so used to 6th grade on up, and I had not had a ton of experience in elementary, but it was also a wonderful experience. It was definitely a change from the high school going directly down to kindergartners. It was a huge change in expectation, but you still have the core values of teaching respect and responsibility. Is just at a whole different level. So there's pros and cons to each level that I enjoyed, and I really valued my time there. And when I was at Holmes, I kind of was like continuing to look to the future, like, can I continue to do this until retirement, which was like felt like 30 years, and the answer was no. So my husband's a State Farm agent,
okay.
And after discussion and this opportunity opened up, I kind of on the type that if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and it worked out. So I took the plunge and kind of the risk of totally switching gears and trying something different. I've really enjoyed it.
So does your husband and you work together at your State Farm agency?
He has an office in Mason.
Okay, different office.
Yes.
But you do the same exact thing, just different
Yes.
locations?
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
And you have a giant billboard on 73, right?
I do. Yes, I have a giant billboard. Hey, whatever brings in the business. Now we get calls in all the time. I saw your billboard, so hey, I'm going to keep it there. It works. It's a good spot.
Nice.
Yep.
Dustin has a less giant billboard.
You do? Where's yours?
You didn't see my billboard?
Where's no.
68, right? Towards Xenia.
By
Oh,
towards
all
Xenia.
right. I need to go that direction.
My husband and I and our roommate, we just went to the movies in Beaver Creek this weekend, and my roommate was making fun of you. She was like, look, he's peeking out behind the tree line
I'll have to check
because
it
he's
out.
going.
Yeah, next time I get out that way.
Yeah, anyways,
I'll be sure to check
we won't drag that out anymore. And then what made you start Sleep in Heavenly Peace?
Well, a gentleman from another chapter of Sleep in Heavenly Peace came to a Rotary meeting, and at the time I was involved in Rotary and attended the meeting that day, and he explained it, and I went home to my husband, just said, hey, I think we can do this. My husband loves tools and building, and I do the kind of the people thing and getting the volunteers and working with the families who need them, so we work really well together, and the fact that he does the tools and the handiwork and I do the people part, and it's just been a really good fit for us. So like I said, I just like to find ways to give back to the community. It's been a big commitment, and but it's been much more rewarding than anything.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, now we're going to transition into your guys' roles. So as superintendent and president of the school board. So Jim, what's the role of a superintendent?
Well, the role of the superintendent, in my opinion, obviously I have 5 bosses, and that's the Board of Education, and I work side by side with the school district treasurer. So that's kind of the leadership makeup of the district. The board hires the treasurer and the superintendent, and then the superintendent manage and run the district, the daily operation, the identifying district needs and solutions to how to fix them, to ensuring that policies are adhered to, or if there needs to be recommended changes for the future, presenting those changes with the rationale behind it as to why. That's, as well as, I guess, the final piece would be to ensure that we're always trying to find, or the superintendent is trying to find ways to improve the education and the security for the students, and provide a safe learning environment for both teachers and students.
Okay. And the News Journal had a giant article about responsibilities that the board was looking for in a candidate, so we'll go through those in a little bit. But before we get into that, Carrie, what is your role? Also, are you the board president now? Mm-hmm. What happened to Mike Flanagan?
His presidency concluded last year. It's year by year, so I'm 2020.
So was Mike the one that hired Brady?
The board did.
The board. So he was a president at that time, and then after that happened, and then you. Okay.
I was the vice president at that time, so
Gotcha.
He stepped down in 2021, and I took over 2022 or 2023. I forgot my years backwards.
Okay, so what is the role of the board, and then how did you get into that? Why did you take that responsibility on?
Yeah. So the role, the biggest factor of the board is just establishing policies and working with the superintendent to make sure that I feel like we're a liaison from the community into the school system as well. So, but the biggest part of it is establishing policies and making sure that we are doing what we need to do as a local school district. We do help kind of set priorities for the district, like the school levy, determining different options and making decisions on what that might look like. So that's also a function of the school board. But primarily we are there, Jim kind of runs the ship, and we're there to help facilitate and make, just be a support system in the background for him. I feel like the policy is a big part of our job. As far as why I did it, well, it seemed to go hand in hand with my experiences. Because I was in education, I still enjoy it. I just didn't want to be in the day-to-day trenches of it. So I still like being involved as much as I can. So that's kind of what intrigued me about this position. And so I'm still able to be involved, but not in the day-to-day, everyday situations that are happening.
Yeah. What's an example of a policy that you guys would look at, or?
We approve policies constantly. So
handbook change.
I was thinking handbook was the first thing that came to my mind. We don't create the handbook, but we review it and make sure it's following in line with, basically it's Ohio law. We have to, if Ohio changes a law in accordance to the school district, we have to sit down and meet and review and make sure that we're changing our practices based on the law.
Is the handbook for teachers?
Students every year. So the elementary has a handbook, middle school. So it talks about absences, code of conduct, things of that nature.
Okay, cool. So the first talking point that I want to go over is previous leadership. So obviously Jim is stepping in for a reason. What were some of the concerns with previous leadership decisions, I suppose? Well,
the position opened up because the previous administrator chose to go to another district. There was no, that didn't leave on bad terms. She took another position and left.
Okay.
So the board did not ask her to leave. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, so the position opened up because the previous superintendent took another position, so we had to post for it, and we had a lot of interest in it, and we had a lot of qualified candidates, and we interviewed, and Jim was the obviously our best choice in moving forward. So it's not to say there weren't grumblings before, but I'm not sure that it was, we were taking into account what the community was kind of barking about. So we wanted to make sure that when we were looking for somebody new, that we, talked about some of those concerns, such as, being more transparent with communication was one that sticks out. And then the discipline factor within our school district. Those are the top two that I think when we were looking for a candidate, we wanted to find someone who would make sure that fit the needs in those areas.
Yeah. One of the things that I was hearing about the grumbling was the decision to make the schools grade level based as opposed to community based. And I guess there's still some issues of parents having drop-off times where two schools start at the same time, so the kids are sometimes late, and there's concerns about that. Is that something that can be changed at this point, or is going to be changed or considered, or what's...
To go back to community school or like neighborhood schools versus grade level centers, or are we addressing the busing situation?
I think it's probably all tied together. I'm sure if the situation is that it went from grade level to location based, and I guess now there is an issue, and that was an issue I guess for some people. And then there's an issue of there's two schools start at the same exact time, and then one kid is late sometimes, and the same with pickup too, and then busing. I guess it's all just a mix of things, I guess.
I think initially people didn't care for change.
Sure.
There's pros and cons to both a community school, like a neighborhood school, versus the grade level centers. There's definitely a lot of...
What was the logic for that? Just curious.
I think one big one was teacher collaboration. If you can put all the teachers in one building, they work a lot better together, and they are able to accomplish more and teach better and collaborate. And as a result, our students are benefiting from that. So I think that was just one of them, but that was a big one, a big factor for that. So with any change you're always going to have some grumbling about it. The busing situation, I think, was... a concern in the very beginning, but we've done this for 3, maybe 4 years, maybe even longer than that. Actually, they did it the year I left, so this will be at least 5 years, going on 6. So I think we've worked out the kinks over time, and yeah, parents do have kids in different buildings. If I had 3 kids, I might have one in elementary, middle, and high school, but I think we have worked to try to make sure that we're helping specifically. Every family's different and unique in that situation, so if they have concerns, I know our transportation works hard, and our Kurt Bone, director of business, works hard to try to brainstorm ways we can help every individual family that has a concern when it comes to busing.
Okay.
Or transportation and getting their kids to 3 places at the same time, type of thing. Do you want to elaborate anything?
No, I think sometimes, as Carrie had just talked about change, I'm sure when the decision to close Martinsville Elementary happened, and there too is a change that people that were living in that neighborhood, that part of the county, were like, wow, now my child's having to ride a bus. How much longer each day because of this change? So it's tough when those changes have to be made, but for the most part, having those teachers in the same building as was shared to collaborate and is a plus. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision to make, but I would imagine the data was looked at and the populations as well.
Do you feel like if people have those kind of concerns that they've been able to express them and have been heard and given another option, I suppose?
I feel that people have had the opportunity. I know that from my perspective, my door is always open. I've shared that. If I receive a phone call and the person is frustrated and wants to meet, I'll always meet. I typically ask, though, if it's a building-related issue, have you spoken to the principal and given them the opportunity to address it? If they haven't, I try to redirect them that way first, just as I would hope that the board, when they're approached on something, have you talked to the superintendent about that? Well, no, I haven't. Well, please give him an opportunity to address it and fix it if you're not happy with his solution. then by all means come on back to the Board of Education and it'll get readdressed. I would hope that that's the type of chain of command that you would want from the community. Otherwise, if there is one board member that's, okay, I'll get it taken care of, and before you know it, it's all, I can tell you that is one thing that's been, I've been extremely appreciative about is, when there is something, it's brought to my attention and I'm able to address it.
Yeah. It's kind of that chain of command that goes back to your military experience and also respecting the people that have the roles.
Sure. You don't want to circumvent their authority.
Yeah. What has your transition been like as superintendent of Wilmington City Schools?
You know what? If it were my first superintendency, it would have been, my first few months would have been, wow. We've had a variety of different unique things happen. But it's happened in other districts too. It's not just unique to Wilmington. Of all the places I've worked as superintendent, I probably had more unique things happen at Fayetteville, the smallest district I was a superintendent at, than even East Cleveland. So you just never know. But the transition, the central office staff are so talented and so amazing. And the thing I've noticed district-wide is how well the teaching staff and the employees get along. It's truly, and that's noticed when you walk in the buildings. It's just, we're at meetings. That's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed. Now, I recently had the opportunity, I had about 16 different meetings scheduled on the training day when the teachers didn't have students, and I met with different groups or teachers just to kind of hear from their perspective. Okay, you're kind of the boots on the ground. Are there things we haven't looked at that, with also the caveat that this is not a finger-pointing session, it's if you have a suggestion and you have a solution, I'm all ears, kind of a thing. Because sometimes the person that's doing the job has a different insight than the person from that higher level that, well, in my case, I've never been an elementary teacher, so I don't know what they're experiencing from that perspective.
Yeah, everyone that I've talked to who has interacted with you has had good things to say. They really appreciate your leadership and stuff.
All right. I hope it stays that way. I know there's a joke out there where I knew a superintendent that was a superintendent for over 30 years, and he said, yeah, each year you make enough people happy that by your 10th year you need to go somewhere else. It's kind of like the coach, that when the coach picks the team, all the parents are happy. Then when playing time comes, it's those 5 players that are starting. Now you've got, but no, I appreciate the comment, and I would, when you're in a decision-making position, you're not always going to make everyone happy. You can only look at each one, try to use common sense and good judgment, and be fair and consistent, and hope that makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that you said in an address that you made that was quoted in the News Journal is that, I'll just read it. I spent many years in Wilmington and believe the community's core values can be and should be reflected in the school system. So the question is, how would you describe the community values, and how are you bringing those into the schools with some examples?
Well, I would say my impression has always been of people from Clinton County and Wilmington is that they're hardworking, respectful, and caring people. And that their goal as a parent is that their child is prepared and ready for things after high school. Are they prepared for success on a college campus? Are they able to have an adult conversation at an interview? Are they able to be respectful? Do they understand the importance of being to class on time and being to work on time? And if the Wilmington High School graduate has the same core values instilled while they're in the school system, they have a much higher probability of success after school. And because of our diverse population, have a much better opportunity to feel I'm on a college campus and I'm just fitting right in. I've experienced all different things, and Wilmington High School offers so many different extracurriculars. Everything from the band since 2018 has been recognized as one of the top in the nation as far as a band community. And last year was, when you figure 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and they've been, there's a possibility they may win it again this year. And the number of kids that participate in our band, our plays are absolutely amazing. And the work ethic and the time commitment to learn the lines of a 3-hour Oklahoma, that's while also participating in other extracurricular activities and having a school class load. But also, what, in my opinion, the core values are, respecting authority, and, disrespect is something that shouldn't be accepted. And have there been some issues when I've been walking through? My goal when I first got here was to be in the buildings as much as I could, so I could see things firsthand myself. Because you never want to come in with a preconceived notion or hear this rumor or hear that rumor. You want to see it firsthand. And to come in and try to immediately impact change because it works somewhere else without sitting back and understanding the nuances behind, okay, why are we doing it this way? So that's the community values, in my opinion, should reflect in the classroom, in the school. If you see how these kids get along at the bowling competition or the academic team, and it's sometimes we don't toot our own horn enough, and the only thing that gets out are the negatives, and it doesn't help when you also have the social media element where people can pretty much, and as a school district, it's out there. You can't challenge it. You just, but the positives have happened quite frequently. So it's that piece of being respectful and have a work ethic. Is there room for improvement? Yes.
So you said you had some meetings with the faculty and the staff, the teachers, and they gave you some of their opinions on things that could be better. What were some of those things, and were they able to be implemented yet?
They haven't been. Two suggestions were something that could probably happen relatively quickly. One had to do with a work order request that had been overlooked, and another had to do with a transportation issue that was fixed the next day. But for the most part, my conversation with them was, once I had the time to assess everything, I would kind of also meet with the central office staff and the building administration, because what I don't want to do, and it's that fine line I touched on earlier, you don't want to circumvent the chain of command and the authority. You just want to hear from a different perspective, and without saying, oh yeah, this team of teachers said this or this person said that. So my plan is to put everything together, disseminate what I feel is something that, wow, this makes sense. This one makes sense. Let me speak to that department head or that building principal about, have we considered doing this before? And if so, why didn't we? Or have we considered doing this? And if so, why not? Because what we can't do is do the same thing and expect to get something different. And that's why those meetings were held. They were not done as in finger-pointing sessions. It was strictly, and some people I hadn't had the opportunity to meet one-on-one and just wanted to ask questions about why I came to Wilmington, those type of things. So,
Yeah. How you said one of the community's values is respect. How would you bring that more into the schools? And is that something you're even able to do, I guess?
I would say that, COVID has impacted school districts across the nation where kids have been on that electronic device at home, away from the school environment, and getting them back into that structured environment isn't something that happens overnight. And it's also a distraction, and it's a challenge in the teaching world to maintain one's attention span when they're used to getting answers through Google or answers through, So but as far as your question with regards to, respect or disrespect, I think there's a fine line that, when a student questions a teacher or says, no, I'm not going to do that, that raises that action at a little higher level than, say, just a minor infraction. And I think that's an area that, in my opinion, is something that could use some work with a small percentage of the student population.
I think I've read in the paper that something that you enacted was, I think, no hoodies and no headphones in schools or something. Is that true, or did I misread that?
No.
That's not a thing that happens at Wilmington City Schools. You're allowed to wear hats and stuff. I don't know where I read that at.
I know that Xenia City Schools recently revisited their cell phone policy mid-year.
Okay.
But yeah, there are certain handbook changes that are on the horizon, or at least discussions. Everything from attire to athletics. Kids make mistakes, but at a certain point in time, they also, in my opinion, need to be part of that extracurricular activity. So we have to, in my opinion, we have to find that fine line of, okay, they made a mistake, there needs to be a consequence. How strict should that consequence be? And should it be to the degree that we're removing them from a team that was a supporting factor in all the good things that was a result of it? They were keeping the grades up, they were coming to school every day, those type of things. So it's that fine line.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to misspeak. I don't know why I thought that for. I think that's like a Lebanon high school policy thing. I don't know why I thought that's what you did too. So one of the community concerns was about discipline. What does that mean exactly? What was their specific concerns? And then how have you addressed those, or how are you addressing those?
I'm not one to look in the past.
Mm-hmm.
All I can do is share with the administrative team that my impression of a good discipline model is progressive in nature, that I would equate it to the high schooler or even the adult that has now had their 5th speeding ticket. They're probably not going to get the same consequence after speeding ticket number 5 as they did after the 1st. So if that student is in the office for something, or something serious enough to where they may be suspended, and they're suspended for 3 days, when that student leaves, the goal would be to share with that student and the parent that, hey, this is pretty serious stuff. Now, if Billy or Susie comes back in here again for something of this kind of nature or more serious, the next time it's probably going to be 5 days. So that it's kind of progressive in nature, so that the student is learning real life lesson, because you're not going to be able to get away with it in the workforce. You're not going to be able to get away with that type of consistent rules infraction or rules violation in the military or even on a college campus. So that's one of the things that my ultimate goal would be, is that discipline is progressive in nature, and that there is an accountability piece, but that it doesn't always result in an expulsion. The challenge with expulsions is that the student is removed from school, disenrolled from school, and then they're not getting educated. But some offenses can be severe enough to where that's imposed, and it's not taken lightly.
Something that I heard, and you can, I guess, say if it's true or not, is that there are certain students who get expelled and then they can come back into the school, and
it's called advance. You can, let's say you come in front of me for an infraction, and I kind of use their discipline file. What I'll do is I'll review their office referrals for the past year. And when I'm speaking with the student and the family present, this is kind of like your resume. When I open this discipline folder, is it going to be a good resume or a bad resume? And a lot of times the student will know, Mr. Brady's not going to be good. I did this, I did that. So that becomes part of the conversation. If it's the student's first mistake and they have a very good resume, not very few or zero discipline referrals, that plays a factor in the outcome. So that's how I look at that. I know there was another part.
Well, does Wilmington City Schools have like a suspension policy where you're just out temporarily, or is it called expulsion too?
It's called days in advance. So a student could be suspended, come in front of me, and the superintendent can then, it's kind of like a probationary period. A student can still finish out their 10-day suspension and have 20 days held over their head in advance. Let's say it was for a infraction that included a vape device. So the 20 days are held over their head to ensure that part of their agreement is they're going to attend the course that's put on by Talbot House to teach them some of the consequences of vaping, popcorn lungs, the negative side effects. And it kind of serves as a crutch to ensure that that student is still going to. If they don't, the one thing that does happen, because I'll look them straight in the face with their family present and say, it will be imposed. So whatever days are held in advance, if it's 10 and they're 5 days into it and they can't follow the rule, violate the rule, skip class, do something, then those 5 remaining days, that student's expelled.
So someone gets suspended for vaping, potentially. They have to go to the Talbot House for classes, and if they don't do that, then they're expelled? Is that what you're saying?
That's an example.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of like being placed on probation.
Suspension is?
No, after the suspension, the expulsion piece.
Okay.
Beyond the suspension, a superintendent can expel a student for up to 80 days. And that's the discretionary number of days that can be imposed if a student is recommended for expulsion. It's normally 10 days with the recommendation for expulsion.
So expulsion isn't always like forever, like.
No, just because you're recommended for expulsion doesn't mean you get expelled either.
And just because I've never understood it, what is the benefit to suspension generally?
Well, in our district, we are fortunate that a student, when they're suspended, gets full credit for the work that they can do while they're suspended. In other districts I've been in, it's been 50%, 70%. They don't get full credit, and that can be looked at 2 different ways. You know, but if that child or that student has time on their hands, and it gives them the opportunity to get caught back up, and they have that all caught up when they come back, it's a win-win. Because now they've gotten their grades up, they were able to do it while at home because they didn't have any distractions, and they turn it in when they return.
So is the maximum number of days that you can expel someone 80 days?
Unless it's it can be an entire year if it involves a weapon. So yes, but 80 days is the typical max.
Okay.
I have not expelled anyone for 80 days.
And can they enroll in a different district in that
They
time?
They can enroll in an online.
You said you never expelled someone. Wasn't there a bomb threat recently? And
Not for 80 days, I said. Well, there's been a few students expelled.
for the year?
Not for the year.
For life?
No. They have been expelled for a number of days.
Okay. So less than 80 days.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Is that challenging? Is that a discipline obstacle then if like someone does something that maybe they need to be expelled for like the rest of the year? You legally can't do that?
There was a time there was a county alternative school, and that was an option. We are exploring an option for some type of an alternative setting for next year.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yes.
What does that look like? What would that look like?
There's a variety. There's 2 different ways. It can be a brick and mortar type of setting, or it can be in lieu of expulsion, you're placed on a virtual school setting, and for this many days, so they're still getting credit while they're out, and then they're not falling behind, but they're separated from their peers, missing the social piece, and the peers are seeing that, whoa, okay, that's not the behavior that's expected, and but that other student is still, because at some point they come back. And the goal is to make sure that our kids are prepared to graduate and they don't get themselves in such a big hole that they give up. So it's that fine line of trying to get the right mix to get the students' attention, hold them accountable, but not have them in such a hole that they can't get out, unless they're a multiple offender.
Go ahead.
Does Wilmington offer like a BIP program or I went to Hillsborough, we called our in-school suspension BIP, behavior improvement program?
Yes, we offer in-school restriction ISR. So the student doesn't have to leave the building, but they're not in their daily classroom.
You've been a superintendent other times than this. In your experience, has students who've gotten disciplined come back and changed their attitude or reincorporated? Okay.
I would say more often than not. And I can tell you that the local probation program works extremely well. That I was looking at a young man's, wow, your freshman year, you sure were blah, 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 had quite a few discipline referrals. And then what happened between here and here? He was on probation. He was doing everything he was supposed to, and then it became a trend. He kept doing it. He made a mistake to end up in front of me, but it had been a while since he'd been in trouble.
Why are you deciding to do something like this for? Has it been like the community or teachers or best practice of what was the motivation to plan this for next year?
In my opinion, there needs to be a lesson learned, but should it be taking education totally away from a person? So if they're afforded in a different setting, away from those that they either disrespected or assaulted or whatever, because the difference between a public school setting and a private school setting is our students come back. And in a private school, they can say, you're not coming back. So when they come back, you want them to still have goals to complete and get their high school diploma. It's that fine line.
Is that helpful for teachers too? So teachers who may have students that have disciplinary issues, is this going to help them, I guess, get those students out of their classrooms so they can focus on the kids that want to be there and want to learn?
It's a challenge. I mean, just because a kid misbehaves doesn't mean they're a bad kid. They could be having a bad day. But if it's habitual and then over time you recognize we need to do something different to get this student's attention, and the teacher shouldn't be spending 15 minutes redirecting that student or asking them to follow the classroom rules.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I would imagine it makes the teachers feel supported if the administration is willing to step in and...
Well, one of the unique things by walking the building that I learned was you take our high school, it's a pretty big high school, and in speaking with the assistant principal, I realized he was at court a lot because House Bill 410 brought this attendance rule down, and we have absent intervention plans, and then there's mediation with the courts, and he's out of the building. I asked him, how often were you out of the building last year? Because I noticed he was out in court a lot. He said, probably 50 to 60 days, Mr. Brady. I said, 50 to 60 days? So what did that do? That left the high school principal by herself in that big building trying to not only be the instructional leader, but to address classroom discipline and the higher level discipline that shows up in her office, and with her assistant being out. So I approached the board about the opportunity to bring a dean of students in, which it's an administrative position that doesn't necessarily require the person to have a principal's license, so that person could help with the lower level discipline, the tardies, the skipping, those type of things, as well as we had ESSER funds to bring in 3 more hallway monitors, because that campus, with it being combined between the high school and middle school for one campus monitor to try to monitor that whole campus was pretty challenging. And so the board approved the opportunity to bring in through ESSER funds. Now, ESSER funds do go away at some point,
ESSER funds
those are COVID funds. I guess Carrie uses the term COVID funds, which makes more sense.
I think it helps people relate to it.
It does. It makes more sense when it's used that way because businesses receive COVID funds and communities receive COVID funds. So we have received COVID funds as well. And they can be, unlike things in the past where you couldn't take federal funds and supplant things, with COVID funds, it's a whole lot more liberal if it has to do with safety and security. You can do other things with it that you probably couldn't have done in the past. So in order to help that administrator and that building, because if I'm that teacher sending the referrals in and I'm thinking no one's reading them, but if I'm the principal and I'm dealing with much more higher level rules infractions or a disgruntled parent or a situation that needs her attention, I think it's, it's helped. It hasn't solved everything, but it's helped, and that's kind of my answer to that.
When does the COVID funds run out?
At the end of next year.
So if we don't pass this levy, then those people are out of here?
Well, no. What would be looked at is, okay, obviously, it's kind of like when a district hires a one-on-one aide, and the student that has that one-on-one aide moves and leaves the district. That person that was hired knew they were hired for that student, so their job would then go away. With the COVID funds, depending on if we're able to see the value in some of the positions we brought through COVID and the levy passes, maybe there are some things that we can fund. I'm not sitting here saying or guaranteeing anything because I don't want to mislead anyone and say, well, I heard on that podcast that just because you were hired on COVID funds didn't mean when they went away. I'm just saying that things would be revisited.
It sounds like it's a position that the community wants. Like it's something that they would support, it sounds like.
But what the community doesn't understand are the unfunded mandates that are put into school districts. Let's just take College Credit Plus, for example. College Credit Plus, before College Credit Plus, you had, what was it called?
SEO.
What was it? Post-secondary option, yes, thank you very much. Post-secondary option, where if you were a high-achieving junior or senior and you had good teacher referrals, you could go to college while in high school. Pretty good concept, right? There was a screening process. It didn't take all the students out of that grade level. Then College Credit Plus gets thrown in the school district's lap, and hey, any 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grader that wants to go to college, guess what? You can go to college. Well, who's going to pay for it? Well, the school district's going to pay for it. Why would the school district have to pay for it? Well, because higher ed got with the legislators and they came up with this plan. And the plan, they didn't realize, in my opinion, the side effects of, okay, well, wait a minute. If I'm a high-achieving high school student and I'm taking AP courses and I'm paying to take that AP course and something goes awry and I didn't pass it, or I find out that so-and-so is going to be the valedictorian because I got a B in this AP course and he took a general math class at Southern State, his GPA is going to be higher. So in the district I was in, we came up with a brick and mortar, valedictorian, salutatorian, and a College Credit Plus. But the problem it did was it took so many kids off the campus in the afternoons that you miss those kids as far as the interaction in the classroom, or you're putting a 7th grader on a college campus at such an early age, and the funding that was presently right now, I think we paid last year $109,000 just to fund College Credit Plus, which in a district our size is probably a little lower than some districts, but it's still something that was dropped in the lap of the school district and they were expected to pay for it or find a way. And you can't reduce the core teachers when that happens, even though those kids aren't in the classroom, because those core classes are still needed for the others in the building. So that's one example.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I didn't know any of that stuff.
I was a PSEO kid.
Okay.
I worked freshman year to senior year, full-time, all of high school, basically. And it was a lot. And I feel like now, looking back, that I missed out a lot on high school. I didn't have a locker, but my first year in high school. And I did marching band, but I mean, sometimes I wish I would have done other stuff.
The PSEO rules in the district I was in at the time was juniors and seniors. Obviously, yours must have been freshmen through.
You had to test it too.
Okay, gotcha. So, and that was the other piece. The testing piece was basically predicated on the entry, the school that was accepting you. So in our case, one of the local schools was actually calling families up to recruit the kids to come to the college. Not here in Clinton County, but yes.
So I think security a little bit ties into discipline. I know you've done a lot of security improvements.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about some of those?
Sure. Probably one of the first things that I noticed entering the two elementary buildings is the buzzer system from the 1980s. And that's an area that we're looking to improve upon. We're in the process of having the window screen designs for the exterior that allow people on the inside to look out, but on the outside can't look in. We are putting new handles. We got a quote to rekey the locks in the district because there were so many master keys floating around over the years. And if you truly want to have a more secure building, well then let's get a better control of the locks and the master key. So while doing so, the maintenance department got a quote from a company that said not only would we beat the quote for the rekeying, we'll give you all new secure handles, put them in all of your buildings at a significantly lower price, and we'll teach you how to rekey your own keys yourself. So the locksmith piece down the road goes away. We have our own supply of keys to remake when somebody loses it. So over spring break, Holmes Elementary will be getting their locks installed, which will also, we are piloting for this company who puts these lock mechanisms, they're out of Indiana, but they put them in many universities across the United States, and they have some in high schools in New Jersey and New York, but we're one of the few Midwest districts that also allows the inside of the room, depending on how the handle gets turned during a security incident, that it will flash or beep on a panel in the office. Now, early on, will kids want to mess with the handle and do things? So there'll be a period where, it's trial and error. Or if we see it's becoming so distracting, then we've talked to the company to say, that's the other option. If we see it's disrupting the education process, although well intended, then the light and the buzzer will be removed, but we still have the mechanism so that the individual teacher can lock it from the inside and no one can come in without a key in all the rooms in the district.
Why would you not do like a keypad or a keyless system?
Probably cost, but this is a pretty durable mechanism. It's made in the USA and it's pretty decent.
It's a nice safety feature.
I'm sorry?
It's a good safety feature to lock one way.
Yeah, lock on the inside. And then the other, one of the things that was clearly obvious was there is a vaping problem in high schools across the United States. And another thing we did was we put in vape sensors in all the restrooms because you don't want the restrooms to be the hangout, and you don't want it to be where kids that really need to use the restroom don't want to go in there so that's another safety addition that we've done. I'm trying to think what else.
The grant?
What?
The grant?
Yes, so here was something very ironic. We'd had one or two incidents already this year, and I'm on the Ohio School Safety Center Committee, the governor's panel up in Columbus prior to coming here, and so I'm still on it, but the Ohio Schools Facilities came out with a safety grant. And knowing how busy Kurt Bone is, and you want to see one of the busiest men in Clinton County, Kurt Bone's one of them. So I said, you know what, I'll put this grant together. So I put the grant together with the assistance of Mr. Geringer. We submitted to be reviewed, had the people from the Ohio Schools Council review it, and the people from the Ohio Schools Facilities review it before we submitted. We were eligible for $400,000, if approved. The list comes out, and the answer was we did not get approved for the grant. The reasonings were listed in bullet points. It could have been A, B, C, or D, but we can't reveal why because of confidentiality or whatever. It's like, wait a second. We had it reviewed by both groups that were the reviewing people or committee, and we didn't get approved, and we don't know why. Yet, as we were able to delve into it deeper, there were districts on that list that received $100,000 because each building was able to have up to $100,000. We submitted for 4 buildings, so that's why we were $400K. Some of the buildings on that list had 50 students or less. They were private schools receiving $100,000, and I'm like, wait a second, this just isn't making sense. So I called BASA, the Buckeye Association of School Administrators, and ironically they were having a meeting with the governor's office, and I shared my frustrations. I said, we're a district that could certainly use those funds. Public schools, I don't understand why there was such a list of private schools on there. A private school can raise their tuition and make their schools safer. The national studies will show that an event is less likely to happen at a private school, and most of the private schools that received the funds were K-8. They weren't high schools. So they heard my concerns. Several peers also called and expressed concerns. So it was revisited to the credit of both organizations, and the governor released more money. So they made a round 4. And fortunately, we came up on round 4 as a recipient of the $400,000. So those are funds that we'll be able to use towards safety and security upgrades, and that will go. The entrances have come up, to be somewhat pricey, but we have ESSER funds to use, and that's one of the things we'll be sharing our plan with the board here shortly on how we hope to spend the remaining balance of our ESSER security funds.
That's pretty awesome. You just cracked skulls until you got the money.
That one was a little persistent.
Yeah.
It just wasn't making sense.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. So, vaping, what about school shootings? Is there any way to protect schools against that?
The biggest is to not publicize and notarize and make it. I've been in a district where we had one outside. It was outside the back of the building. The school district went into lockdown. We had local law enforcement respond. We had the sheriff's department respond. But what we learned during that process was we had only done our drills with the local police department. We hadn't done them with both agencies. And the other agencies' protocols were different than what our teachers, our administrators, and the local police department were used to. So it created a conflict during a high intense situation. But when it was all said and done, everything turned out well. We had a debrief. And I thought it was rather ironic when I got here, Kurt had already had one scheduled with Tom Breckel and the local agencies, the sheriff's department, the police department, and used our school district they even brought up the communications mobile center from, I think it was Hamilton County, to have a drill using our students that were actors, and it wasn't, okay, we're going to put ketchup or make it look. They each had a sign that said that this is what happened to them, so it wasn't real graphic. But then the local police department, sheriff's department responded accordingly, and one of the things I think during the debrief that was noted was the communication piece. Which channel are we using? How are we communicating between interagencies? So it's you hope with safety and security drills that after you do them enough, it's kind of like the fire drills. Fire drills are done enough as a student that over time, you know the routine, you know not to talk, you know where you're going. The challenge with safety and security drills is you need to have a primary and an alternate, or sometimes even a third location, because if you truly want to keep the bad person off balance, that's what you have to do. Have we had a situation this year where the school was evacuated? Yeah, the bomb threat. And the church could not have been more helpful. You try to keep, as those things are happening, you try to keep the public informed, but you also want to stay on top of what's happening at hand. And then when you get a minute, get the word out that, we've evacuated, where the schools are in Plan B or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. So for the drill with the school shooting, was that an after-school thing, or was the whole school involved with that?
It wasn't a drill. It was the one I talked about.
Oh, no, I mean when you did with the cross.
Oh, that one. At the beginning of the year, that was before school started. Before the school was even in session. And it was an active shooter drill.
Who was a part of that training? Like all the teachers and...
There were students, some staff. Mostly it was for law enforcement and local first responders.
We do provide training to teachers, though.
Alice training.
Yeah, it is called Alice training, and just for that reason, so they know how to react depending on the situation at hand. So our staff and students are trained on that.
So that training...
But it is something we probably need to do more of.
We do fire drills, tornado drills once a month. That's required by law.
Which today was a fire drill, I think, at 9:50.
A tornado drill.
Tornado.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that drill was mostly to train the law enforcement how to respond to the situation?
One you're talking about at the school.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then ironically, the next day, they had a situation on, I think it was 73, where they were called out. There was something happened at the FBI building in Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a helicopter in the air at the 73, and now, hopefully from the communications from the day before, it helped with that response. Yeah. That wasn't near the school, but it was off of 71. I think it was 73.
I was just talking about that yesterday during the run-along.
With the officer about the police, the chase thing? Yeah. So long story short, the school is addressing security and discipline issues.
Yes, but they can get better. We'll never be perfect, but we'll continue to strive to get better at them.
Yeah. So one of the points in the News Journal article about your addressing whatever that address was that you wanted to improve the interaction with the community and just immersion in general. So what does that mean?
Well, I think what I learned as a local superintendent in a smaller district, that sometimes you find out things from the community when you're attending extracurricular events, and somebody will come up and they'll, it's kind of like, I kind of try to time my time when I go to Kroger, because, it's, so when I intentionally, am going to extracurricular events, it's one, to be supportive of the student athletes and band members or the academic team members, whomever it may be, but then to also hear from the community. And there have been multiple times when people will come up and either share something positive or negative, or have you heard. So there's one way, is to be, in my opinion, more physically present. I've taken on an apartment here in Wilmington. I still have my house, and my wife is living in Columbus, so I live down here during the week so that I can attend these events and be present, and she understands that importance during the school year. Now, I don't know that she plans on that happening when the students aren't in session, but, so here, being at those events, and then also being invited to speak at the Rotary, or meeting with the chief of police, and meeting with the safety director, and meeting with the mayor, and getting to meet with the juvenile judge and the magistrate, and hearing their input, or their perception, or their recommendations. You just try to gather all that in and get a good picture of what you've just stepped into. And that's kind of, why I feel being out there allows the communication. And the other piece is, as things happen, to try to communicate it as quickly as is feasible. In the world of social media, the kids are already texting and saying, A, B, and C happened, and here comes the announcement, which, there was a disconnect during the bomb threat day, where a message had gone out that we were canceling school, And we hadn't sent that out necessarily yet, but that ended up being the case. So there are hurdles along the way also.
So what are the different ways that you communicate? Apart from just being at events, how do you communicate with the community?
I would say that's the primary way for me in having the open door policy. And
There's a district newsletter that Jenny sends out,
right.
email.
We send the newsletter out. Which also includes the board minutes and the fact sheets for the levy and anything new that's happening. We try to communicate by using the news journal and share a lot of the positives that are happening at the schools, and then at times even provide the pictures and some of the comments along with the pictures.
Is the newsletter for parents or
In
for
community.
And
anyone
be
can sign
accessed
up
on
for
our website.
Okay.
And you can join the list to just receive them as they're once a month, I believe.
Okay. You mentioned, so your wife is retired currently, or?
Yes, she's a retired elementary principal.
And she still lives in Columbus when you live here? Is that kind of hard?
During the week, but no, not when you're getting home at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. It's part of the job, and she understands that. She
So,
knew that I was bored at my last job. Let's put it that way. Bored in the sense that my day started at 3. Started at 7. I was over at 3, and I was on the golf course by 3:30.
Mhm.
Not a bad gig, but it was because the hours you were able to work. Not saying it was easy in the sense that the responsibility and the coverage and getting in a car and driving to Cleveland to go visit with the principal or those type of things. But the day was pretty scripted in that you could only work as a state employee so many hours a day. You don't have those limitations as a school superintendent or a school administrator. Our administrators, our athletic director, the amount of hours that they put in, it's absolutely amazing. You go by their offices. I try to pride myself to be in before 7 each morning and go past the building or two, and principal's cars are already parked out front.
so is your plan, is Columbus your home, or is your plan to relocate here permanently?
You know, the one caveat my wife gave when I was applying for the position was, this is our forever home. We're in a golf community, but you do that during the week. Because even when we were in the same household, and she was a principal and I was a superintendent, or I was an assistant superintendent, we saw each other 7, 8, 9 at night, start our next day. So it's an adjustment, but I'm very fortunate she understands.
You and your wife live in a golf community. Are you both big golfers?
Yes, we've become, not very good, but we both.
It's a putt-putt golf community.
I've noticed 3 golf outings coming up. We've got the basketball outing, we've got the football outing, and we've got the, what was the last one I just saw? Harvest to Gold outing, all coming up. So
If there was a putt-putt community, I'd live there.
Do you think that sends the wrong message to the community, that you're not forever home is in Wilmington?
I don't know. That would be up to the community to decide. If they weren't seeing me, if they weren't,
Yeah.
if I was out the door at 4 o'clock, I think it would be a significant concern.
Right.
If they're seeing me and they drive by my office, I'm there at 9 o'clock at night, and I'm only gone on the weekends. And when I say weekends, if there's a football game or a play, I haven't missed a play yet. Those kids are absolutely amazing, how they do what they do, and how it's flat out awesome.
It does sound like you are here to get a job done, and you're doing a pretty good job so far, it sounds like.
I'm here because I'm passionate about
Yeah.
the opportunity that the board has given me.
I just thought I would ask that, as I didn't know that was the case for your home situation.
So I actually am renting, so it's not like I'm just popping in. I'm just not. I also have a home, and I don't own a home here in Wilmington right now.
It's nice because you're supporting a local landlord as well.
Yeah, my sister happens to be my local landlord.
All right.
I didn't know that.
Small town.
I have nothing about it.
What are some ways that the school is helping families to flourish, and what are some things that you're most proud of the school district?
When you say helping families to flourish,
What was the beginning of that?
This is actually a submitted question, so I'm just regurgitating. Yeah.
Did it just come fresh in on your computer?
I mean, like, I wrote it out, but it wasn't like I thought of this question.
Freshly submitted.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna edit that out, jerk. I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna make you work for this.
Okay. I guess I would I know that there's some challenges with students who maybe have English as a second language. How is the school working with them? I know the school does also really good things as far as having their food pantry. So that you're supporting the community. I hear like really great things about that. So I was just curious about other things that I might not know about, or people might not know about, that you're doing to help the community.
well, I wouldn't say it's me. I would say it was the different groups.
Yeah.
For example, the varsity boys basketball team served food over Thanksgiving break and hit a lot of people in the community. The food pantry, the CMH day when the kids are all standing outside the corner there by the breakfast for, what is it?
Break for breakfast.
Thank you. And all those students are getting up that early on a school day to go out there and get cars to go through and get the packets. And I mean, there's so many things. I received an email from somebody in a neighboring community to say that they were at, I'm pretty sure it was Skyline, and he was dressed as Santa, and he said in walked some students, and it's high school students, and it's like, okay, this can go one of two ways. And he said
They've been naughty or nice.
In all his years, he couldn't have been more impressed on how these kids were so engaging with the little ones and how polite they were. And in fact, at one point, one of them says, I've got an elf outfit in my car. And the student went out and put it on and came back in and helped with Santa. So those are the things that don't always necessarily make the public news. We had a student that, after a tough loss in a soccer match, walked up to the official and shook his hand and thanked him for, one, officiating, because officials catch a lot of flack nowadays, and Ohio High School's having a hard time finding enough officials, but this student went and just thanked the referee and walked away, and that referee was so impacted that he wrote a letter to the Ohio High School Athletic Association complimenting this student, his coach, and the team on how they conducted themselves and represented their community. So those are some of the things that don't always make Facebook or some of the local sites, but so those are two things that come to mind.
The high school also offers, it's called Cane's Carryout, and that's a like a food pantry, hygiene products that any family in the district can sign up for if they need additional resources as well. It's run by a couple high school teachers, actually.
I think they won an award for that recently at the C4 Awards. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, locally, yes.
They were nominated. I don't know if they won or not. I think
Yeah.
they won.
So that's something.
The food pantry.
Aaron
High school.
Henry.
I'm pretty sure they won. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great support for a lot of our families.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned ESL. We do have a small handful of those students. We have a great program and teacher who helps provide resources for those families. Our school counselors do a great job of connecting families to solutions or Job and Family Services or other local family resources. So, there's always something out there that Clinton County has a variety of resources for our families, and our counselors are very well aware of what's available and support our families in those ways too.
So you talk about like the local news not picking up the stuff like the kid shaking the referee's hand or the Cane's carryout, and then you hear things in the community like there is no discipline, no leadership in the school. Do you think that's because the news and social media and everything just focus on negativity?
I would say when the school district can't counter something that's said and it's only one-sided, when it's in a forum like this and and there's dialogue back and forth, and I think that's a much more productive venue. And you also don't want to self-promote to the point that really they're going to that extreme. So it's that fine line. But when there's recognition, I think Carrie and I were both at that concert, and when Matt Spradlin shared only 600 schools in the nation are recognized for that award, and we've been receiving it since 2018, that's significant. And then you see and hear these kids perform. It was interesting to hear the 6th grade band, and then the massive, just in 1 year, the 7th grade band. And it was awesome the way they had it set up. And then hosting the wrestling, the number of, I can't imagine how many hotel rooms were filled up that night by the volume of people that were at the district wrestling match that Mr. Wiederhold and Mr. Deals and the wrestling coaches all take on to kind of show off the community, show off the venue. I mean, those are things that don't have to happen, that are done because of that reason. Or do we have okay.
We have a few minutes still, right? I got to transition to a few other things before we get out of here. So one of the comments that was made in the news journal is that there is a decreased enrollment in Wilmington City Schools, and you hope to address that. What is the cause of that, and how can that be addressed?
Well, I think what we're seeing is there's a push in Ohio to kind of the voucher program, number one. People think that each school district is getting funded $7,000, roughly $7,000 per student per building. Ohio's funding is set up in that the amount of funds the school district receives from the state is based on the property values and the income of that community. So our students, we receive $2,618 or something per student. The rest is made up by property tax levies. So our district isn't receiving the same funds as, say, a private school, a local private school. High schools get $7,500 for each student, and they don't have things like state testing requirements, resident educator requirements, all the other. They can pick and choose, in many cases, the students they serve. Public schools serve everyone, and that's unique. But public schools also offer so many things. I would venture to say a large percentage of all of our community went to public schools, and they've all done well in their life and have been successful. Not everyone has the ability to go attend St. X or Moeller or even the Christian school. So when there are options, people can take advantage of those. But if they're leaving, from my perspective, I've had the opportunity to speak to some of the parents, not all, and ask questions and try to learn so that we can readdress things for next year. Because if you're losing them early and they stay away, you're missing out on 12 years of that student being enrolled in your district.
What are some of the concerns, or the general consensus maybe?
I would say that, behavior and discipline were some of the concerns.
Which sounds like you're addressing.
Yes, but we're not there yet. I don't want to sit here and sound like the problem is solved or that it's that egregious, but it is a problem. And hopefully over time, and not a long time, it gets addressed to where our numbers, and some it's relocation, but there are some that leave for that reason.
I mean, it's not solved yet, but you have been superintendent for less than a year, and you're already taking some pretty massive steps. I think that's to your credit. People should have trust in you, I guess, or could have some trust in you for that.
I would hope that the people that know me know that if I say I'm going to do something, I'll do everything in my power to do it, but I'm also, if I make a mistake or do something wrong, I will take the full blame. So I'm not perfect, but I just want to make a positive difference and let the community hear and see more of the good that's happening. And I'm telling you, it's there. It's there. And the support from the Wilmington Schools Foundation and the boosters and the organizations that give up their free time and to do the things that they do, it's crazy. And the amount of businesses that donate, that don't take it for granted. Because, I think one of you is from Lebanon. Was it you?
Yeah.
Dustin. And one of the things Lebanon, at the Ohio School Boards Conference, they usually present on how they pass their levies every year, and they're consistent, but they also, appreciate their high property value, so it's that catch-22.
Mm-hmm. So we'll transition to the last two questions. Let's pretend that people still have issues or whatever. Just philosophically, what's the value of a public school for a community?
I just feel like the value of public education is all-inclusive. So I feel like because I send my child to a public school, she's, in my opinion, getting a much broader education as a person. She's learning more about acceptance, about diversity, about socioeconomic differences, how to treat people, and no matter who you are and what you do and where you came from, they are human, and that's what I want her to learn by sending her to public. As a prior administrator, what was frustrating to me is every day when I would go to work, I'd probably spend 90% of my day on 3% of the population. So I would spend all my time focusing on 4 or 5 kids because they were the ones who were acting out or behaving unacceptably, not following the rules. So majority of my time was spent just on a small number of kids, where the 98% of all the, well, air quote, the good kids who are following the rules were not getting, the accolades, and we're not tooting the horns of all the great kids. We're just focusing on all the negativity. And I think that that's shining into our community. There's so many fantastic kids out there who come to school every day, do the right thing, make the right choices, who are studying hard and excelling in these higher level academic courses, but we're not really focusing on them because we're at times too busy focusing on the disciplinary issues. I'm not saying we need to ignore the disciplinary issues. I just think we don't tutor them. We don't broadcast all the positives that are happening in Wilmington enough. And that's something that I feel we can do better at moving forward. But there's just so many great things in Wilmington City Schools and in public education that it's not always out there and known. And I firmly believe that as a result of a public education that I got and sending my daughter to school like that, I just feel like I'm a better person today as a result of that.
Did you want to answer that question too?
Well, I think the nail on the
think she
head.
did. I
can say
That's a topic I care about.
having gone through public education myself and through the Wilmington school system as a free and reduced student who wasn't, necessarily had a pocket full of money or, I felt totally welcome. I felt prepared for when I did join the Marines and fit in with pretty much every setting because of as Carrie said, I was exposed to kids from all different walks of life, all under one roof, and we got along. And that's what makes the difference. That's what people tend to forget. That's what I think keeps those of us in education still in education.
And that's the value of public education, is you are benefiting from so many different
experiences and that carry on after school.
Lifelong lessons.
Yeah. We have 20 minutes.
Okay.
But this is the last question.
Okay. Well,
What is, so just this question is to help empower people, I guess. How can they cause change without voting no? Or maybe just voice their opinions or voice their concerns and feel heard. I know Carrie, you're on the board of education, so people can come to meetings.
absolutely. Just get involved. Reach out if you have questions. Maybe seek for understanding. I'm a firm believer that we may not always agree, but we can agree to disagree on something, and let's just talk it out and have a conversation and figure out what it is, why you're concerned, and what can we do about it, and work together to learn more about the situation. So getting involved, contact someone with questions. I know Jim definitely has an open door. I'm always available to talk if it's a school issue, call the principals, but let's just work together to communicate, to figure out, what the concern is. And we may not be able to solve it necessarily, but at least we can talk it through and make sure we're all on the same page with the communication and understanding what the concerns are.
Yeah, just kind of humanize the issue. So
yeah, let's talk about it.
Maybe you have limitations, what you can do, but you understand that it's an issue. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else?
Involved in PTO, extracurriculars, boosters.
Pay time off?
There's big ways.
PTO is parent-teacher organization, right?
Yes.
In the teacher world.
In the education world.
What does that mean? What does that look like? What's a parent-teacher organization do?
They do a lot for the schools, and there's a big one at the elementary schools, and they put on like carnivals, raise some funds for the teachers. So any fundraising efforts, they can buy things to help support, like recess games, just small things that teachers don't spend their money on that they can support and do. A lot of fundraisers, a lot of fun activities, and a lot of ways to help keep the funds back in the school to support them, the teachers and the students.
Mm-hmm. Do they advocate at all for anything, or just help fundraise stuff? Do they voice concerns at board meetings?
Well, they have guest speakers. So Kim and I have talked to the people. They have people show up to talk about things that are happening within the district. So they like people to come to them because they're already in a meeting. So that's just the way it's been as far as I've been around. Is if they're inquiring about the levy or just financials within the district, or they'll reach out and have somebody come and talk.
And what's the best way for people to contact you if they have more questions?
My school email probably would be the best way to contact me. I have a school email just like everybody else.
And it's just Carrie.
Carrie.Zeigler at Wilmington K12.oh.us.
Okay, and we'll link to it on our show notes page.
I think I left out a dot.
And I assume it's the same for you, Jim?
Yes, it would be Jim.Brady.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for being on our podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having us.
Thank you.
Well, that is it for our podcast today, folks. Hope you enjoyed hearing from both Jim Brady and Carrie Zeigler about issues of leadership and discipline. If you have more questions for them, definitely be sure to reach out to either of them directly. Their contact information is on the school's website, very easy to find. And if they will spend 2 hours of their time talking to Emily and I in the basement of Pino Lundy, they will talk to you as well. So happy to answer any questions that you have that we didn't think of.
Be sure to keep your eyes out for the second part of this podcast about academics and culture with our guest that time would be Matt Spradlin, Sam Woodruff, the principal, and Nikki Quallen, the curriculum instructor.
Yes, and Matt is the band director and dean of students. So we're going to sprinkle in some more conversation about discipline as well. So with that, I'm your host, Dustin Pierce.
And I'm Emily Spencer.
Keep it real, Wilmington.